Hello, EMBA students. Most of you are experienced presenters and probably already know most of what we'll cover here. But I see so many presentations delivered in corporate settings that could be made so much better with just a little bit of effort and coordination on the part of the team. These guidelines can help you move from something that's mediocre to something that's really memorable. Professor Miles and I will expect you to demonstrate these skills during your upcoming team presentations for class. Let's take a look at the agenda.
Take a minute to scan this agenda slide so you know what to expect. The graphics section is optional, since many of you are already experts in that area. However, I will be grading your slides as part of the communication portion of your grade. So if you want a refresher, you can watch the presentation or skim Chapter 6 on visual aids in your Muncher textbook, which was the book we used for class last year.
Moving from mediocre to really memorable is not difficult. It just takes some time and coordination. In a just so-so presentation, we're lucky if everyone shows up on time. But for a memorable presentation, everyone is there and ready to be introduced at the start. Team members have planned ahead of time where to sit or stand and how to change places between each speaker to avoid those awkward little dances that sometimes happen between sections. Plan to stand so that the speaker can get cues from the confidence monitor. That's the smaller computer screen on the podium. Here in McNair Hall, most of the rooms now have large monitors on the floor in front of you. Position yourself so that you can glance at the monitor while you're presenting so you can avoid turning your head back to the big screen. And when I say glance, that is exactly what you should do. Don't read your slides. You can prepare better than that. Next, in mediocre presentations, the important content pretty much gets covered. Memorable presentations do that and more. They show that your team carefully allotted the right amount of time to the content, and they demonstrate coherence through use of meaningful transitions between sections. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Finally, remember that the graphics are there to support you as a presenter, not to take the place of your presentation. Be sure to use consistent style and font sizes. Use the master slide function in PowerPoint to set one standard and then follow it. Number your slides. There's another unit on graphics best practices you can access if you think you may not know what you don't know. After the presentation, a unified team presentation assigns a master of ceremonies to direct the flow of questions and answers. More on that in a moment too. Most of this begins at the planning stage.
Do the research on your country and decide on content and supporting information. Next, develop a storyboard and write an agenda slide to give your audience a preview of what they will hear. Doing this demonstrates your logic and reinforces your message. Ask your team, what order will we present in? Who'll serve as the master of ceremonies for the question and answer session? Will one person run the slides, or will each presenter run his or her own slides? If you're presenting online, decide if you'll transfer slide sharing or have one person run the slides. As you know, I'm a big fan of using the pyramid principle to organize your content. Let's look back at that. Do you remember the pyramid from last year? Of course you do! Once you've finished your research and decided what content to include, using a pyramid will make it easy to divide up the slide development, since each person can take a section. This is the time to think about logical order between sections. If it isn't apparent to you how one section leads to the next, then your material is probably out of order. Go back to your pyramid stage and move your boxes around until things flow naturally. You might remember that last year we used a case about a city manager who decided to recommend to the city council that a medical waste disposal facility should be approved. You can see a sample pyramid on the next slide, and the slide after that shows you how we turn the pyramid into a storyboard. You may remember that Dwayne from the case decided that the council should endorse the facility because it would be safe and quiet, because Valley Medical's efforts would complement the city's infrastructure, and because the facility would benefit Dover City economically. Once you have your content in a pyramid, you can develop a high-level storyboard. Then you can assign team members to develop the slides for the segment they will present, especially if you've selected a slide master in PowerPoint. Let's look at a possible storyboard for this simple presentation. You can see that after the title slide and agenda, the slides in the talk follow the pyramid structure. If you keep your eye on the colors and toggle back and forth between slides 7 and 8, you'll see how the storyboard tracks the pyramid. The pyramid literally becomes the template for the progression of slides. Each section of the presentation provides additional detail on that sub-idea. Remember, too, that for an oral presentation, you'll also add an opening statement, or we call it a hook, to get the audience's attention. In this example, Dwayne might offer a statistic about the importance of infrastructure for city development, or a story about a sister city that had success with a similar proposal. I've mentioned transitions a few times. I've seen so many mediocre presentations, and the transitions go like this. The speaker just stops and walks away, leaving the audience wondering what's next. Or the speaker says, and with that, I'll hand it to Rajiv. Well, that's better than just falling silent and expecting the next person to step up and start. But saying, and with that, I'll hand it to, is a weak transition. It does nothing to help your audience follow the logic and flow of your content. Instead, the speaker should explain why what comes next is the next logical question your audience wants answered. To make this seamless, all you have to do is plan ahead of time and deliver it. Here are a couple of ways. First, you could consider a look back, look forward transition. For example, now that we've looked at how the new facility will make our city safer, Callie will explain the infrastructure improvements pledged by Valley Medical. You can see more information on this kind of a transition in your Munter text on page 103. Other options for transitions are first, second, third, or other verbal transitions. The key here is to plan it ahead of time. This is the single most important element of making a team presentation unified. Physically, the speaker should finish his or her content, deliver the transition sentence while making eye contact with the audience, and then leave the presentation space. Don't talk while you walk. The next person can begin if the transition was complete, but if not, there's still a chance to save the team. For example, you might say, Julia has explained some of the safety benefits of the facility, and there's more. Valley Medical has pledged funding for infrastructure improvements. Okay, it's all planned and it's almost showtime. Practice and decide how you will signal that very enthusiastic team member who always talks for so long. After all, you don't want them taking up your time. Check the slides in the room where you'll present. The colors that look so awesome on your screen might look terrible in the room. Google Docs slides often change formats when projecting from McNair computers, so I advise a pre-check. When you're getting ready to deliver, pause before starting, make eye contact, and connect with your audience. Add meaningful hand gestures and try to reduce filler words. As your presentation ends, it's your colleagues' turn to ask questions. Having a Master of Ceremonies, or MC, will make that process flow smoothly. Think beforehand about the questions you expect to get asked. What question do you hope no one asks you? Be ready to address it. Decide ahead of time who will answer what kinds of questions. Generally, the subject matter expert for a given section of the presentation would take the question. During this session, the MC runs the show. Other team members should not acknowledge audience questions. Only the MC does that. Otherwise, audience members might be acknowledged a couple of people at a time, and no one knows who has the floor. The MC should take the questions and relay the question to the appropriate speaker. As the speaker answers, the speaker should keep answers short and specific. Do not repeat negative wording. For example, if you're asked, "Why are your fees so ridiculous?" you might rephrase and say, "You're asking about our fee structure. Let me explain how we got there." If needed, you can repeat and rephrase a question. One thing that's pretty important is that after a speaker answers a question, the speaker should turn his or her gaze back to the MC. If you answered a question and you keep looking at the audience member, you appear to be inviting a follow-up question, and that's not your job to do. You need to look back to the MC. It's the MC's job to take questions and also to monitor the time available for the Q&A session. At the end of the Q&A session, the MC should deliver a short summary of the discussion that reiterates the key point. Don't just say, "Thanks for coming." That wastes your opportunity to make your key point again. So take the time and make that key point again. Finally, I have seen tons of cute clip art with giant question marks in my time. However, the question slide is the most likely to be the slide that the audience sees for the longest amount of time. So rather than a cute question mark, consider putting your agenda back up to remind the audience of key parts, or put a call to action or a key summary point there.
Okay, that's it. You can easily develop a memorable presentation. The International Team Presentation is worth 30% of your grade in ES3. Dr. Miles has his own rubric for his 15%, but my 15% will be divided as you see here. We've covered items 1 and 2 in this short presentation. The third part of the grade comes from the quality of your slides. I'll be looking for the following. First, a title slide with 4 elements. The title, of course, which tells the audience what the presentation is about. Next, the date, because it sets your information in the context of time. The third element is the audience, in this case ES3, because it signals that you have tailored the content to your audience's interests and level of expertise. Finally, listing your team member names tells us who is on your team and also helps protect your intellectual property if your slide deck is sent out electronically, which frequently happens in business settings. After the title slide, we'll be looking for the agenda, which tells the audience what to expect. Make it specific and meaningful. Slides should use a consistent theme and fonts. Within text slides, use bullets or phrases instead of full sentences. Audience members cannot really listen and read at the same time, so it's better to limit the text so that they can focus on listening to you. And don't forget to number the slides. That'll be easy if you begin with a slide master in the PowerPoint software. As I said a moment ago, I'll expect your slides to adhere to these professional standards. You may already know how to build great presentation slides, but if you don't know what you don't know, and you want some more information, look in the Session 7 tab for a link to an online workshop. That's about 10 minutes long. Or you can go back to your textbook from last year, the Munter book, and read Chapter 6, which is about 30 pages long. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions about how to make your team presentation the best it can be. And remember, you'll probably be doing another team presentation before the end of your program. And I think the deans sit in on that one. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you in class soon.